The storm began the way all storms do in this part of town. Quiet at first, like the sky was clearing its throat. By the time the sun slipped behind the tree line, the rain was already whispering against the roof, a soft pattern, too soft to worry me. But storms have a way of hiding their true weight. And that night, as I stood in the doorway, with the warm light of my home behind me and the dark pressing in from the yard, I felt something shift. Not in the air, in the house, in him. I remember the smell of the evening more clearly than anything else. The damp leaves, the soil waking under the rain, the faint scent of dinner lingering in the hallway. Daniel moved through the house like he was trying not to disturb something or someone, every footstep careful, each door closed with a softness that didn't match the rising wind outside. We had barely spoken all day. Not because of a fight. We hadn't even had the strength for that lately. It was the quieter distance. The kind that fills a room the same way fog fills a field. Slow, pale, silent. I tried to pretend everything was fine. I always did. But when the first heavy drops slammed against the windows, I felt the thin curtain of peace pull away. A loose chair on the porch scraped loudly with the wind, and I sighed, wiping my hands on a towel. "I'll just bring it in," I called out. Daniel didn't answer. He didn't even look at me. Sometimes silence speaks more plainly than words ever do. I had learned that too many times with him. When I stepped outside, the porch light flickered once overhead. Yellow, then white, then nothing but the shifting storm. The rain came down in thick, uneven sheets. Not the kind that falls, the kind that attacks. I reached for the crooked chair, pulled it against my chest and turned toward the door. That's when I heard it, a soft metallic click. At first, my mind didn't even register it. It was a familiar sound, one every house makes a dozen times a week. A door settling, a bolt shifting. But then I noticed something else. The porch light from inside cast a faint glow through the glass pane, and Daniel's shadow stood perfectly still on the other side. I blinked, confused, my hand still gripping the wet wooden chair. The rain drummed against my back as I stepped toward the door, expecting it to open, expecting him to reach for the knob. He didn't move. The doorknob felt cold under my hand. I turned it. Locked. "Daniel?" My voice cracked more from surprise than fear. He didn't respond. He didn't even shift his weight. He just stood there, silent, dark, unmoving, like a piece of the house itself. I knocked lightly first, then harder. The storm swallowed each sound before it could bounce back to me. "Daniel, open the door. It's raining." My voice dissolved before it reached the glass. There's a moment you feel the truth before you understand it. It lands in your chest like a quiet stone, heavy but almost gentle. The rain soaked through my clothes, turning everything cold and clinging. My hair plastered against my cheeks. My breath came out in little clouds against the glass pane. I pressed my palm to it, trying to see him more clearly. "Did it jam?" I asked, forcing a small laugh. "Just unlock it. It's freezing out here." Nothing. Not a tilt of the head. Not a blink. Not even a shift in posture. He wasn't confused. He wasn't distracted. He wasn't asleep or angry or overwhelmed. He was waiting, watching. And that was when the truth settled fully, slow and careful, into my bones. This wasn't an accident. I wrapped my arms around myself, partly for warmth, partly so I wouldn't shake. I stepped away from the door, rainwater running down my sleeves, and looked through the window one more time. Daniel finally moved. Just a little. His shadow shifted, and then walked away. No words, no explanation, no hesitation. The hallway light flicked off, plunging the inside of the house into a quiet, deliberate darkness. That was the moment the message became clear. He didn't want me inside. Not tonight. Maybe not ever again. The storm wrapped around me like it had been waiting too. The porch boards creaked under my feet, old wood swollen with water. I stood there with the chair still in my hands, though I no longer remembered picking it up. The rain softened for a moment, almost tender, almost apologetic. I don't know how long I stayed there, minutes, hours. Time doesn't move the same when you're no longer sure which world you belong to. Behind the door, behind the walls I once called home, he didn't make a sound. Not one. As lightning flashed across the yard, I whispered the only question that mattered, one carried away as soon as it left my lips. When did I stop belonging? The storm didn't answer, but something else would. Soon, the rain had a way of swallowing sound that night, as if the whole world had decided to whisper. I remember standing there on the porch, soaked clear through my sleeves, trying to breathe, trying to understand the man behind the door. and the silence he chose instead of me. My fingers had gone numb when I saw them, two soft beams cutting through the dark road, floating toward me like a memory I hadn't asked for. And in that moment, with the storm trembling around me, I wasn't sure if I was being saved, or if something else had finally arrived. I didn't hear the tires at first, only the distant hum of an engine that didn't belong to this neighborhood, rolling slow over wet pavement the way old things move, carefully, as though time itself might shatter under them. When the headlights finally reached the bend, I felt a strange tightening in my chest, the kind that comes before recognition, before fear. The car was familiar long before I saw it. A faded blue sedan with one headlight dimmer than the other. It had carried me to school, to markets, to quiet places, when the world had felt too tall for me. My grandmother's car, and somehow, even through the sheets of rain, I knew it was her in the driver's seat, sitting just a little too close to the steering wheel, shoulders squared like she was driving toward a battle she'd already prepared for. I didn't move. I couldn't. She pulled up beside me, not fast, not slow, just certain, as if she'd been following a path only she could see. The engine rattled louder than usual, a tired old sound that still carried a kind of strength. Then the door opened, and her small figure stepped out, shawl already in her hands. Before she even looked at me, she didn't ask why I was standing there, why my clothes were dripping, why the porch light behind me flickered like a dying heartbeat. She simply draped the shawl over my shoulders, her hands trembling not from age, but from something heavier, something she wasn't ready to name. "Come," she murmured, her voice worn like pages turned too many times. I followed her to the car without a word, my legs stiff, my skin aching from the cold, my heart thudding in a way that made breathing feel unfamiliar. When she opened the passenger door, warm air spilled out, soft and fogged with the scent of mint leaves. She kept tucked under the dashboard. I slipped inside, the fabric seats absorbing the water from my clothes, as though they'd done it before. That's when I saw it, a small cloth bundle resting on the dashboard, wrapped tight, deliberate. Grandma lifted her hand and placed it over the bundle, not protectively, but possessively, as if someone might reach for it, as if it belonged to a moment still waiting to happen. "What is that?" I asked, my voice thin, barely louder than the storm tapping on the roof. She didn't look at me. Her eyes stayed forward, watching the house, watching the door he had closed. "Not yet," she whispered, and the way she said it made the car feel smaller. The windshield wipers dragged across the glass, slow and uneven, like the car itself was tired of seeing this place. Grandma started the engine again, her fingers tightening around the steering wheel, with a quiet urgency I didn't understand. But when she looked at the house, my house, her expression changed. Not anger, not shock, something older, like she'd been here before, standing in some other storm, waiting for someone else who needed rescuing. "Did he lock you out?" she asked, voice flat. I swallowed, the words caught in my throat. The truth felt too heavy to speak out loud, but she didn't need an answer. She nodded once, as though she'd been expecting that silence. Rain rolled down the windshield in trembling lines, distorting the house until it looked like it was melting into the earth, like it wanted to disappear. Grandma reached out and brushed a damp strand of hair from my face. Her hand was steady now, warm. "You're shaking," she said. "I'm fine," I whispered. But my voice broke on the last word, soft enough that it might have been mistaken for a breath. She didn't call me a liar, didn't tell me to be strong. Instead, she placed her hand over the cloth bundle again and closed her eyes for a moment, like she was listening to something only she could hear. When she opened them, there was a certainty there that unsettled me more than the storm. "We need to leave," she said quietly. "Right now." The car rolled forward, tires pushing through muddy water, the house shrinking behind us with every passing second. Yet, it felt like it was watching, like the windows were eyes, and the door he had locked was a mouth that wanted to speak but wouldn't. I pulled the shawl tighter around me, the warmth seeping slowly into my bones. Grandma kept one hand on the wheel, and the other resting on the bundle, never lifting it, never letting it go. The storm swallowed the road ahead, but she drove into it without hesitation. I turned back one last time, the house now nothing more than a dark shape in the rain. How did she know to come? How did she know exactly when to find me? The answer lingered in the shadows of the car, quiet and waiting. Grandma's cottage looked smaller than I remembered, almost swallowed by the storm around it. But the windows glowed, a soft, amber light that felt out of place against the trembling branches and the wet gravel beneath my shoes. When we stepped inside, the fire snapped like it had been waiting for us. I could still feel rain sliding down my back, dripping from my hair, but Grandma didn't comment. She only closed the door gently, like she was afraid the night might follow us. And then she placed the cloth bundle on the table, the bundle she hadn't let me touch. The cottage always smelled the same: warm cedar, dried mint, and a hint of old paper. The kind of smell that made you breathe slower, even when everything inside you was breaking. I stood near the fire, holding my elbows the way I did when I was a child. Grandma moved around the room quietly, lighting a second lamp, tightening the curtains, checking the lock on the back door. None of it looked unusual, but she did it with a heaviness, a rhythm that felt practiced. I had seen her move like that once before. The night my mother didn't come home. I sat at the table, dripping onto the old floorboards. The cloth bundle sat between us, small but strangely heavy, like it carried its own gravity. "Grandma," I whispered. "What is that?" Her eyes flicked to the bundle, then to me. There was no fear in them, just knowing. "Something you should have been told long ago," she said, brushing the water from my sleeve. "But your mother didn't want this life touching you." "This life?" I repeated. She didn't answer. Instead, she slowly began untying the cloth, pulling at each knot like it had to be done in the right order. "Or something would go wrong." The cloth fell away, and underneath was a wooden box. Old. Older than the cottage. Older than the hands that held it. The carvings on the lid were shallow but careful, tiny shapes, twisting into one another, symbols I couldn't read but somehow recognized. I leaned closer without meaning to. Something about the box felt familiar, like a smell from years ago you couldn't place but knew by heart. "I've seen this before," I murmured. Grandma nodded, her gaze softening. "You saw one like it. In your mother's trunk. You were too little to understand." She slid the box toward me. The wood was warm, as if the fire had seeped into it. "Go on," she said. The latch gave with a sigh and the lid lifted. Inside wasn't what I expected. A photograph lay on faded velvet, edges curled, colors nearly gone. But the boy in the picture, I knew him. Daniel. Small, maybe 7 or 8. Hair too long, eyes too dark for a child. He stood beside a woman I had never seen. Not his mother, not any relative he had ever mentioned. Her hand gripped his shoulder like she was claiming him. I felt the breath leave my body. "Grandma, who is she?" Grandma lowered herself into the chair across from me. Her hands, usually steady, rested on the table like she needed to feel the wood beneath them. "She wasn't his mother," she began quietly. "She wasn't kin to him at all." I looked at the photo again. The woman's eyes were sharp, empty of softness. Everything about her posture told me she didn't stand beside Daniel because she cared, but because she owned something she wasn't supposed to lose. She was part of a small group, Grandma continued, choosing each word carefully. People who believed certain objects held power, influence, ways to bind others to you, loyalty that wasn't earned but taken. A coldness ran through me, even with the fire behind my back. "Daniel doesn't believe in things like that," I whispered, though the words felt weak. Grandma didn't look away. "That woman raised him for years, before the family found him again." Found him. The phrasing caught in my chest. "What happened to her?" I asked. Grandma hesitated. She vanished. But the things she taught him didn't vanish with her. My hands tightened around the box. "And one of the objects she used," Grandma said, her voice low, "is still in your house." My stomach dropped. "In my house? Where?" She shook her head. "I don't know where he keeps it. But you must find it before he uses it." The fire crackled softly, sending shadows trembling across the floor. The photograph lay between us like a quiet accusation. Daniel wasn't just a man who had shut a door in a moment of anger. There was something older, something darker threading through the pieces of his past. The wooden box clicked shut when I lowered the lid. The sound echoed in my chest. Outside, the storm beat against the cottage roof, but it felt like something else was waiting in the dark beyond the rain, something that had followed him from childhood and now lived in my home. Grandma put her hand on mine. "We'll search together," she whispered. "But be careful. Whatever he kept for a reason." And the night suddenly felt much colder. The storm was dying, but the world still felt wet with its breath. Rainwater slid down the car windows in thin, trembling veins, catching the faint blue of the early dawn. I watched the sky lighten, slow and reluctant, as if it wasn't ready to see what waited in my house, or what had been living there with me all this time. Grandma's hands stayed steady on the steering wheel. Mine wouldn't stop shaking. By the time we pulled into the driveway, the house looked smaller, darker, like it had curled in on its own secrets. The air outside smelled like wet dirt and night-blooming jasmine, the kind that grows wild along our fence. I stepped out of the car carefully, almost afraid to touch the ground. The puddles reflected the house in broken pieces. Roof, window, shadow, door, like a memory that didn't want to come together. Grandma stood beside me, pulling her shawl tighter around her shoulders. She didn't say anything. She didn't need to. The porch light flickered once, then steadied. For a moment, the quiet felt heavier than the rain had. It pressed against my chest, slow and cold, filling the space where my heartbeat used to feel certain. We walked toward the door. I could still remember the moment it shut behind me hours earlier. How the click had sounded too soft for something that could cut so deep. Grandma touched the door frame before stepping inside. Her palm lingered, as if she were listening to the wood. The house smelled like damp carpet and something metallic. The kind of smell that follows a storm, but doesn't belong to it. My breath hitched. It felt like the walls were watching us. Daniel was on the sofa, face down against a pillow, one arm dangling off the side. An empty glass rolled near his fingertips, little droplets shining in it. His breathing was steady, too steady, as if he had slipped into a sleep deeper than guilt or worry. Grandma looked at him only once. Not with anger, not even with pity. Something quieter, something knowing. She moved past him without a word. Her footsteps were soft but certain, like she'd walked this path long before tonight. I followed her through the hallway. The air grew colder with each step. The kind of cold that comes from inside walls, not weather. The bedroom door creaked when she pushed it open. I had slept in this room for years, but I had never seen it look so drained of color. Like someone had pulled the warmth out strand by strand. Grandma knelt beside Daniel's nightstand. She didn't search, she felt. Her fingers glided along the wood grain until they stopped. A thin line separated a small panel from the rest of the drawer, something I had never noticed. She pressed lightly. A soft click answered. A hidden drawer slid out. My pulse stumbled. Inside the drawer lay a small object wrapped in worn fabric. Grandma unwrapped it carefully as if it could bruise. The same symbol that carved the wooden box was etched into the surface. Curved, looping lines crossing each other like vines around a stone. The air shifted. I felt it before I understood it, an invisible pull at the center of my chest. Tight and sharp, like the room had exhaled something it wasn't supposed to let go. My fingers tingled. Daniel had kept this hidden, inches from where I slept. Grandma held the object in her palm without touching the symbol. Her face didn't change, but her breath did. "This," she whispered, "is what turned him." Her voice didn't echo, but it sank into the room like a pebble falling through deep water. I stared at the symbol. I had seen it before, on the box, on old papers in the attic, on the edge of a photograph whose corner Daniel had torn off years ago. My skin prickled. "Why would he keep this?" I asked. Grandma didn't answer. She was studying the object the same way a doctor studies a wound and already knows it's infected. The silence stretched thin between us. Then she closed her fist around it. The room seemed to flinch. Grandma stood quietly, as if listening to something inside the walls again. Then she turned to me and placed a hand on my shoulder. Light, steady, grounding. "Some things," she said softly, "don't belong in a home." Her words didn't soothe me. They unsettled something deeper. We walked back toward the door. Daniel still slept on the sofa, the empty glass now on its side. He didn't stir. The sky outside had begun to lighten, the first thin line of gold touching the horizon. But the house felt darker than ever. As we stepped onto the porch, Grandma closed her shawl around the object. "Removing it," she murmured, "is only the first step." I looked back at the house, at the door that had locked so easily, at the shadows that still clung to the corners. If this was only the first step, what came next? The rain had slowed to a whisper by the time we stepped into the backyard. But the earth still breathed beneath our feet, soft, swollen, alive. Grandma carried the object wrapped in her shawl, holding it the way someone carries a truth they don't want to speak aloud. I remember my hands trembling, though the air wasn't cold anymore. Maybe it was the silence. Maybe it was knowing that whatever waited inside that bundle had lived in our house longer than I ever understood. The storm clouds were thinning overhead, but the night still felt heavy, as if it wanted one more secret before letting us go. Grandma didn't rush. She never did. Her footsteps pressed deep shapes into the wet grass, each print filling slowly with rainwater. I followed her, keeping a distance I didn't intend, as though the thing wrapped in cloth was pulling the space between us wider. The house glowed faintly behind us, a single kitchen light. Daniel had liked warm lights at night, said they kept the darkness gentle. But I didn't know if that man still existed. Not after everything Grandma had told me. Not after the nights he walked past me like I was furniture instead of his wife. We stopped beneath the old neem tree. The branches hung low, beads of rain trembling on their leaves. Grandma finally turned, her face neither angry nor afraid, just tired. The kind of tired that comes from recognizing a truth too late. She placed the wrapped object on the ground between us. The cloth darkened quickly, drinking the last of the storm. "Before you do this," she said quietly, "you need to understand, this is not about punishing him." Her voice cracked at the end, barely, but I heard it. "This is about releasing him. And you." I nodded, though my throat had already closed. She knelt first, unwrapping the cloth carefully, like peeling back the corner of a memory you'd avoided for years. The object lay there, small, dark, carved with the same symbol as the box we found in his drawer. It looked harmless, ordinary even, like something a child might pocket without thinking. But the moment the cold air touched it, something in my chest tightened. A familiar pressure, a weight I'd been carrying without knowing its shape. Grandma noticed. She always did. "Do you feel it?" she whispered. I nodded. "It's not magic," she continued. "Not the kind you read about. It's belief." Her belief. And his. She paused. "Sometimes the things people grow up with don't let go easily." Daniel had never spoken about his childhood. He'd smiled when the subject came up, but not with his eyes. Grandma handed me a small iron tool, rusted but heavy. A tool she must have kept ready long before tonight. "You don't strike it because of what it is," she said. "You strike it because of what it's done." The wind shifted, brushing wet leaves against my arm. My breath fogged in front of me, and for the first time, I looked at the thing not with fear, but with recognition. This silent carved fragment had stolen the softness from his voice, the warmth from his eyes, the man who used to reach for my hand before he reached for anything else. It had to end. I lifted the iron tool. My arms felt heavier than they ever had, not from the weight, but from knowing this moment might change everything. The first strike didn't break anything. It only echoed through the ground, a hollow sound that melted into the wet soil. The second strike sent a thin crack running across its surface, a line of pale dust blooming like breath. Grandma stepped back. Her eyes didn't leave the object. "Keep going," she murmured. And I did, not angrily, not with fury or vengeance, but with a quiet desperation, like trying to wake someone who's been sleeping too long. On the fourth strike, the object's shape buckled. On the fifth, something inside it released a sound, a sharp, brittle sigh, as if it had been holding itself together for years, and finally lost the strength. I froze, because somewhere inside the house, through walls and rain and distance, Daniel shouted my name. Not the harsh tone he'd used these past months, not the cold, distant voice that made me shrink into myself. This was different, frantic, confused, human. Grandma closed her eyes. "That," she whispered, "is what breaking belief sounds like." The rain began again, soft, uncertain drops that tapped against my hair as if asking permission. I stood there staring at the shattered remains at my feet. Each piece looked dull now, emptied, harmless. When we walked back toward the house, my clothes were soaked, my hands trembling. Daniel was standing in the kitchen doorway, his face pale, his hair sticking to his forehead. He looked at me the way he used to after a nightmare. Lost, tired, almost free. "Where were you?" he whispered, voice cracking. I didn't answer. The silence between us felt fragile, like glass warmed by the sun but not yet cooled. Behind him, the house no longer seemed to watch me. But now that the object was gone, I wasn't sure which parts of him would return, and which parts never could.